The Detroit Lions, who come into the season as the second favorites in the NFC after Philadelphia, they have a really tough schedule. Detroit.
Nightmare schedule. They had 3 outdoor games last year. They have 7 this year, which, I mean, that could be a little overblown, but we've also discussed on this show why it matters. They only have 1 after week 11, but just, Matthew, the sheer volume of difficult opponents on this schedule. Look at weeks 1 through 7 until they get to the bye. It feels like playoff team after playoff team.
Yeah, it really, I mean, right, again, at Packers, home to the Bears, at Ravens, home to the Browns. All right, so, too good, too bad. But then at Bengals, at Chiefs, home to the Bucks. They got to bye, home to the Vikings, at my Commanders, at the Eagles. But I will say this, especially if you're thinking about best ball, or you're thinking about, I do love the end of the schedules. We sort of talked, last year we were talking about how Goff and the Lions, they have a tough schedule. They have a great schedule, a lot of indoor games up until the end of the year, but they only had 3 outdoor games, but a lot of them came to the. Throw that schedule back up for 1 second here, producer Adam. Do me a favor, throw that back up if you can, because I just want to show you the end of the end of the Lions schedule.
The home games.
The home games towards the end, like the fantasy playoffs there. Look at it right here. So starting in week 12, when you're trying to get into the fantasy playoffs, home to the Giants. Home to the Packers, that's the Thanksgiving game, right? They always show up there. Home to the Cowboys, that's another Thursday game. Then they're at the Rams, so that's outdoors, but it's going to be warm weather. Then they're home to the Steelers. They're at the Vikings, that's a Christmas Day game, and that should be quite a shootout. And then their only road game where you're nervous about weather is Week 18 at the Bears when the season is over for almost all fantasy leagues. So just in terms of both for best ball and for season-long fantasies, you're heading down the stretch. I think the Lions are going to make a difference. Gibbs, Amon-Ra, Laporta, and, of course, Jared Goff. It's a nice second half of the schedule for the Lions if you can sort of get through the first part.
Yeah, I think there's a case that the Lions are the best team in the NFC alongside the Eagles, which isn't really going out on a limb. Obviously, they came in as the 1 seed into the playoffs last year, but they're the type of team where you look at the schedule, look at the imbalance, look at how brutal it is in the first half, and then it lightens up a bit to your point, Matthew. They're the type of team where you kind of hope that they struggle a little bit 6-4, 5-5, and then their price to win the NFC drifts and gets a bit longer because I think they're going to come home like a steam train and the roster is still absolutely loaded.
Yeah, my only thought there, though, is, and I think Dan Campbell is a strong enough coach, and that team's a veteran enough team that they can weather that storm. But what happens a lot of times with NFL teams is when they get off to a hot start or they struggle, it just starts feeding on each other, right? And I don't know if you guys remember this, but one of the points I made when I made Jalen Hurts my ride or die, and people were like, "Are you crazy?" Philadelphia sports fans are angry that they didn't draft a quarterback. Yeah. This was going to be Hurts' first year as a full-time starter. I said, look at their schedule. I said, they're going to be 5-1, 6-2. And I said, and when they're winning, all the callers on Philadelphia sports radio are going to shut up, and they're going to start believing in themselves. And that's exactly what happened. The Eagles were rolling there for the first, 10, 12 games of that year. And same with my Commanders last year, right? I mean, they didn't, quote, play anyone, but they were 7-2. And suddenly people were starting to believe in Jane Daniels.
All that, you don't play no one, you play someone.
You understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, right, because that year,
NFL,
they said that about the Eagles, damn, are we actually going to see them play somebody? Yeah, 2 years ago. And then they got to the Super Bowl. They lost, but it was
the Super Bowl.
Right, so.
They were a ticky-tack, pass interference call away from winning that game, right? But my point is just that if the Lions are 6-4, 5-5, and all of a sudden people are saying oh, Ben Johnson was the magic, and they're missing this guy and that guy, and they miss Aaron Glenn, and
it's 2 new coordinators.
That's two new coordinators, and remember what happened with the Eagles after their Super Bowl year when they lost Steichen and Gannon, and they went through it. That was a bad year by Philly standards that year because they had 2 new coordinators, and then they reloaded this past year, and obviously they won the Super Bowl. But I always think when you look at the schedule, that's important in terms of whether you can get off to a hot start or if you're going to struggle early, because that does sort of seep into the locker room.
I think it does. Yeah, I think it does. And I think coaches feel it, which is another problem, and just the pressure you feel. And also, a lot of these teams are going to be installing new offenses or new defense, or they have new staffs or a second-year quarterback that's taking the reins for the full time. instilling confidence is really important for the entire team. You don't want to feel your back is up against the wall because you start out 0-2 and everyone starts throwing the stat in your face. Teams that start out 0-2 probably don't make the playoffs. So I think September schedules to me matter a lot. They really, really do.
Well, the good news is if you're the Lions and you're awesome, every single game is winnable.
I'm about to say, roster's so good.
They won't be
play good team ball.
Barring injuries, they won't be bigger than a field goal underdog in any game. So every game is winnable.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.